welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm your host, James Thompson. We are live from the Tate Student Center in Athens, Georgia. Glad you're joining us. Wrapping up the first week back from spring break here at UGA. I had a great one. Hope all my student listeners did it as well. I hope student listeners realize how lucky they are to be in a point in their lives where we get a week off. I certainly am pretty pleased about that. Funny thing happened, though, over the break. You know, all that homework that I had hanging over my head at the beginning, well, it didn't magically dissipate by the end of the week like I expected it to. It was still there when I kind of checked my status on Friday, so I've been scrambling to get caught up. But anyway, we're back in the swing of things here. Got another great program for you, I hope. I'll certainly try to make it that way. As you may know, if you've listened to this show before, we focus on bringing you interviews with leaders in the Athens and UGA communities. Our guest today usually gets paid to sit behind a microphone. He's certainly not getting paid today, so we really appreciate him stopping by. He's the guy that I usually turn to in the morning to get my day started, catch up on the breaking news, that sort of thing. Tim Bryant is the news director at local talk station WGAU. He co-hosts Georgia's Morning News from 6 to 9 in the mornings. That program can be heard on many stations throughout the region. And then from 9 to 10, he hosts Newsmakers with Tim Bryant, which airs on WGAU. Tim, welcome to the program.
Good to be back.
Well, thank you for stopping by. As you mentioned, we've spoken once before on the air last semester when I was doing the Athens Journal Interview of the Week, kind of a beta version of this show here. So a lot of what you do is kind of the same thing that I'm trying to do here, except you do it on steroids. I have to get one guest every week, and you get, like, I don't know, several every day.
4 or 5 a day.
4 or 5 a day, yeah. So this is, hopefully interesting for our audience, but also just for my personal edification. How do you line all those people up? Because I find it, I've been able to schedule guests, but I can find that to be somewhat of a challenge at times.
You know what's been a great asset in that department? Social media, Facebook. The company I work for, Cox Media Group, they literally forced me onto Facebook. 2012, you got to have a Facebook account, and it has turned into such a tool. Facebook's two things. It's either fun, it's a toy, or it's a tool. If it's anything else, it's an annoyance. But it has turned into such an amazing asset there. I have a couple of thousand, what do we call them on Facebook? Friends, yeah. And followers on Twitter, a couple thousand more, could always stand more. But so many of them are people that I would be trying to chase down on a cell phone. The people in the legislature, people on the county commission, people on the school board, writers, journalists, the types of people I talk to on my program, they're all on Facebook. And there are days when I'm an hour before airtime, I'm still lining up people, and I'm doing it on Facebook or Twitter. So that has been an amazing tool for me. It's made my life, frankly, a lot easier.
So not so much email anymore.
Some. I mean, I get the press releases, and listen, somebody's sending me a press release because they have something they want to talk about. I got time on my radio show. Come on, talk on my radio show.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that smartphone is I'm working it pretty good.
Very, very cool. I actually have a Twitter account for the same reason you have a Facebook. When I started hanging out at WUOG, the news director told me that you need a Twitter and a Facebook. I whined about the Facebook enough to get out of that because I'm probably more old school than you are, Tim, which is kind of.
I'm not old school. I'm Old Testament.
Well, so I'm probably going to have to break down here and get a Facebook eventually if I want to do something in the news media for a career.
Again, it's a tool.
Right.
There's tools on it too, but that's another discussion.
So last time we spoke, and we're going to talk. We're going to talk today, as I was telling you before we went on air, about some news items, especially the Georgia legislative session, but also I just want to talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis. Reason number one being it's something I'm interested in as possibly pursuing as a career. But first, last time we spoke, you came in to give us your take on mainly the Senate and gubernatorial races that were going on at that time. This was, I think, in November last year. And at that time, the polls were pretty close, Democrats even having leads in some of them. And both of us were kind of like, well, didn't didn't really see this coming, but it seems to be a sustained push from Democrats, and then boom, we're right back where we started.
And there was all this talk, and it became evident to me in a couple of weeks before the election. There was all this talk because, remember, there were Libertarian candidates in both the Senate and gubernatorial races, and thus those folks get enough votes or deny enough votes to one of the other Republican or Democratic candidates in one or the other or both of those races. Well, we might have runoffs, and I kept looking at the polls, and more to the point, I kept looking at what was going on nationally, and I came to the conclusion there ain't going to be any runoffs here.
Right.
These guys, Purdue's going to win, Deal's going to win outright, and they both did. And it was not, I'm not some kind of savant here. All I could do was look at what I was seeing nationally, which was a huge Republican wave building.
Right.
And you're telling me we're going to have Democrats winning in Georgia or Democrats getting themselves into runoffs in Georgia. You would have to have a very red state buck a huge national trend. That wasn't going to happen. So I wound up, again, no great insight on my part. I just wound up being right.
Right. And as far as political affiliations go, at least, we ended up right back where we started. Sure. And then, of course, nationally, the Republicans controlling both the Senate and the House. And just while we're talking about national politics for just a second, I just can't figure this out in my own mind, and I want to get your take on it. The letter that the Republican senators,
the 47 Republican senators to Iran,
which I was listening to some liberal talk radio earlier this week. I try to diversify my media intake, and
where did you find it?
I tune in radio, the TuneIn Radio app, which is what I use to listen to you in the mornings. But they have a little browse section on there, which I find this interesting. For some reason, conservative kind of, discussion for some reason seems to lend itself well to talk radio, while liberal discussion seems to lend itself better to Jon Stewart and that sort of thing. Conservatives haven't really been able to successfully do what Jon Stewart does, and liberals haven't really been able to successfully do what Rush Limbaugh does.
Sure, that's a good observation.
And I don't really know why that is, but it seems to be the case.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any great insight for you. I would suggest this, and people ask this all the time. Why do people like Rush Limbaugh have tremendous success on the radio in terms of ratings? Why is the Fox News channel huge on cable in terms of its ratings? Part of that is this. The conservatives like to say, well, it's because we're all conservative. That is great wellspring of conservatives out there. Well, we know that's not true. We are a 50-50 country, basically, in terms of left-right. What is documented in data is that folks on the left are listening to Rush Limbaugh. They don't like what they hear. They complain about what he says, but they're listening to him. Folks on the left are watching the Fox News channel. They don't like a lot of what they see, but they're watching it. Folks on the right ain't going to watch MSNBC. They're not going to listen to some left-leaning radio program. They just don't go there. But the left, in pretty significant numbers, listens to the folks on the right. That's how they know what Rush Limbaugh says, why they yell and scream about what he says. They wouldn't know if they didn't listen.
Gotcha. And so anyway, this particular left-leaning host I was talking to kind of astutely, I thought, pointed out, or the irony between the 47 senators and the 47% comment that did Mitt Romney in. That was my reaction also. Thought that was pretty clever. But anyway, I just can't figure out if this is going to be a political win eventually or a political liability. It seems to me that it could be a pretty damaging liability, but I don't know if after the dust all settles, if something could happen to make these guys look justified. If the bill goes down and then Iran ends up with a nuke.
That's the bigger picture. Nobody's going to remember 47 senators who wrote some letter to the mullahs in Tehran. That's not the issue here. Frankly, the treaty to me is not the issue here. Have a treaty, don't have a treaty. Iran's going to do what Iran wants to do until Iran is stopped.
Right.
Whether we do it, whether Israel do it, whether in some concert, Iran is going to be confronted. I don't mean to get all geopolitical on you here, but I can see what's coming.
Gotcha.
This is in a really big picture. It's 1938 again. They are, if you all you got to do is look at a map and see the swaths of territory they're taking over there. The fact that we are closing embassies, the fact that ISIS is running loose and metastatizing into something very, very large here. Right. They are going to be confronted. Forget the letter, forget the treaty. It's not going to matter because they're not going to live up to the terms of it anyway.
And I'm not going to ask you to proceed forward with that analogy to who's Churchill and who's Chamberlain, but
I think it's fairly obvious.
Let's turn homeward
Sure.
For a minute here. And locally, I guess you could say locally, statewide, the state legislative session, I think about 10 days to go, April 2nd, the last day for bills to be passed there. Last day that session will be in session. Two kind of very frontward bills that I wanted to ask you about. First being the transportation bill, which is House Bill 170. And so basically, there doesn't seem to be much of an argument that the roads, bridges, other transportation, infrastructure in this state needs some upgrades, needs some funding. There may be some debate.
I was going to say, let me give you an argument if you haven't run across one. What there is a consultant's report that says, first of all, let's look at the two numbers they give us, the range of numbers they give us. It's going to cost, you need, state of Georgia, between $1 billion and $1.5 billion a year just to maintain the roads and bridges you have.
Right. That's a pretty big
disparity.
There,
yes. Which is it? $1 billion, $1.5 billion? That's $500 million. Which is it? And if you know that it's going to cost this much, you must have a list of projects someplace. Let me see your list.
And you haven't seen it.
I ain't seen a list. There is no list. This is just a figure that was ballparked by these people and a lot of people in the legislature. I can give you one name, and she's from right here in Athens, State Representative Regina Quick, Republican, who like me, is questioning that figure. Everybody else treats it as though Moses carved it into stone and brought it down from a mountain. So I want to know the basis of that figure, first of all. So
Gotcha.
that to the extent that it now. I'm in a minority. Representative Quick is in a majority when it comes to that. Everybody else says you've got to come up with this money somehow, and the question then becomes how, and that's the focus of the bill.
Sure, but I suppose there is at least bipartisan support, if not unanimous support, for this sort of thing.
Well, there's I don't know that there's anything going to be unanimous here because there are pretty big differences between what the House is proposing and what the Senate just yesterday came out with by way of proposal.
And that's what I was going to get to. The original bill, House bill, has, there's a lot of stuff in the bill, but for example, a 29.2 cents per gallon state excise tax on gasoline. The Senate bill that has the stuff the Senate has tried to change, it's tried to lower that to 24 cents per gallon. And then, they've got...
Well, what the Senate has by way of offsetting just that difference, that what is it, about a nickel's difference in the excise tax.
Right.
By the way, the excise tax, those who may not know, what you pay now for a gallon of gas in Georgia or with a gallon of gas in Georgia is a 4-cent tax. 3 cents of that is dedicated to the DOT, goes to the State Department of Transportation. The other penny, the fourth penny as it's called, goes into the general fund.
Right.
With this change from a sales tax to an excise tax, every nickel, every penny would go to transportation. And now you've got the difference right away in the Senate version and the House version. You get about a nickel. So what the Senate is proposing now, this is Tommy Williams, State Senate Transportation Committee Chairman from down in Toombs County. He has this idea, says we're kicking the tires on it, pardon the pun, this idea of a $25 annual fee for your automobile.
Right.
You got 2 vehicles, then you can pay $50. But any vehicle you have, $25, an annual fee.
And then a $50 on bigger vehicles.
Exactly,
like trucks and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that is one variance between the House and Senate.
Tim Bryant, local radio host, with me today on Talk of the Town. We're talking about some statewide, some bills in the state legislature that have made it past the March 13th deadline, crossover day, that are still getting kicked around there. So, Tim, like you said, not everybody's even convinced that these figures are accurate, that there's really the need for $1 billion.
And that's not to say that there isn't the need for road maintenance.
Sure.
There always is. There always will be.
Absolutely.
And there will be the need for new transportation infrastructure. There'll be the need for new roads and bridges, and you got to figure out how to pay for those.
And then the House and the Senate currently dealing with 2 different versions of the bill. What are the chances and what needs to happen if this is actually going to get passed?
One thing that I would watch for is another aspect of this, the T-SPLOST part of this, the transportation sales tax referendums. We had the regional referendums in 2012, divided the state into 12 districts, kind of arbitrarily drawn. They were voted down in 9 of them. There's some talk now of amending the law to allow counties to voluntarily enter into agreements one with another. In other words, Athens-Clarke County could decide to enter into a sales tax arrangement with Oconee County or Madison County or Oglethorpe, Barrow-Jackson, some of the surrounding counties, to partner on raising revenue for specifically defined local or regional projects. What you have with the referendum of 2012 was, again, the legislature just draw arbitrarily these districts. Athens wound up in a district with Lake Oconee, for crying out loud. Athens approved it. The Athens voters did, but the other counties, there were about 15 of them, they all voted it down. People in Putnam County don't care whether Athens has bike lanes or not. So they voted it down. They weren't going to tax themselves to pay for Athens infrastructure. If you have something that's done locally, regionally, that would probably have a better chance of passage.
Gotcha. And let's move on real quick to one other issue I wanted to talk about. Governor Deal, and I realize we're leaving a lot left to be said there on the transportation bill, but we've only got so much time, and I've got a lot of other stuff I want to get to. But the Opportunity School District sounds great, right? Opportunity School District, put them together.
Who could be against opportunity?
Right, absolutely. But Governor Deal proposed earlier this year a constitutional amendment that would create this Opportunity School District, and basically the idea, as I understand it, is that failing schools, based on CCRPI, which that's a whole other discussion, but failing schools could be taken, put into this statewide Opportunity School District where they now report directly to the governor's office. They're accountable to the governor's office under the direction of a governor-appointed superintendent, and they're there for at least for 5 years, and then if there's improvement, possibly they go back to local control, and if not, maybe they stay for another 5 years. There's been, obviously, as there will be with any legislative initiative, some opposition to this. We've spoken on both of these programs with Dr. Philip Lanou, who's the National Superintendent of the Year, the AASA National Superintendent of the Year. And when I spoke with him a few weeks ago now, he was very much against this, thinks it takes away local control. I want to get your insight on the politics of this.
It's in trouble politically. First of all, the huge hurdle that has to be cleared here, you mentioned it's a constitutional amendment. It would go before the voters in 2016. Before that would happen, it would need 2/3 approval in both the House and Senate. Now, it has it in the Senate. Got it by the exact number of votes.
One Democrat switched over, I think.
And the story there is that she was bought. There's a Democrat from down in Albany. Hey, how would you like some money for Albany State College? Okay, we need your vote here. And that's the story that's going around there. But they got it with exactly the number they needed. The line, I think, to hit in the House, they're looking at 61 votes, the folks who are critical of this. That's the number they need to hold. And it's anybody's call right now. They may not get it. They may not get the number of votes they need, they being the governor, may not get those in the House, so it may not come to a vote next November of next year.
So it may be derailed before a lot of these potential, even if it got past this, a lot of other obstacles it still has to
the ultimate
clear
obstacle would be the voters, right. If it were to go. Now, a lot here, a lot of parts at play here. People, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. Frankly, I don't know enough to advocate one way or the other here.
Sure.
But people, Dr. Lanou's point being that, this would take away local control. That is the point. The local control, the governor would say, needs to be taken away. You just had, as required by the amendment, 3 consecutive years of not meeting the standards as spelled out by whatever acronym you just threw at me.
Right.
That you're not meeting the grade. You're not making
College Career Ready Performance Index.
Something to that effect. Yeah. Yes, thank you. You know more than I do. So you need to have local control. That's the governor's point. You need to have local control taken away. By the way, the governor, as we sit here now, absent any new law, absent any constitutional amendment, he has a tremendous amount of power anyway. And he's exercised it on a couple occasions. A couple of years ago, removed 6 of 9 members of the DeKalb County School Board. He can do that. Yeah. He can remove the school superintendent. He can do that. He has that kind of power now.
And another part of this that Dr. Lanou brought up, I interviewed him for this program and for a journalism class assignment. So that's the reason I know a good bit about this, because I had to do a good bit of background research for that. They're transitioning to either Clarke County is going to be a charter school district.
Right.
Other school districts
in
can
all
choose.
Likelihood it will be.
Right. Not official yet. Still some got to be a vote.
I think is
right.
When we look
I believe that's correct. But so there's this change in how school districts operate. They have to choose whether to remain a kind of the standard model now, an IE squared model or a charter model, which charter and IE squared, obviously we don't have time to get into all the technicalities and nuances there, but basically close to the same thing.
Yeah, what the charter school legislation would do, a charter school isn't able to do, empowered to do, is to remove themselves from a great degree of state autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much burdensome regulation coming down from the state. We want to be exempt from a lot of that. My question remains, I've been asking this for years, if the problem is too much state regulation, aren't we approaching it from the wrong direction? Why not address the state regulation that you find so burdensome? Get rid of some of that stuff.
Right. And then that was, I think, Dr. Lanou's point also, that, state regulation, more state control, especially when we're just starting to try out these different, systems, charter, IE squared. Why do that now when we're already changing something up?
Well, and ask yourself this, you want to talk about, again, circle back to the issue of an opportunity school district to allow the state to take control of failing schools. The governor, in rolling out this proposal, came out with a list, was it like 147 schools, I think?
Yeah, one of which was in Athens.
One of which was in Athens, Gaines Elementary School.
Yep.
So ask yourself
which
this.
Dr. Lanou was not a big fan of that.
No, he's not crazy about having that school on the list, but there it is. Okay, so your governor deal. You're going to take over these schools. You're going to take control away. To take away control of Gaines Elementary School would be to take control of the school system from the National School Superintendent of the Year. You got somebody better than that you're going to put in?
Doesn't look good. I don't know. I mean, they could come up with somebody, but doesn't sound likely. Tim Bryant, local radio host of WGAU, joining us here on WUOG today. I really appreciate him stopping by. So this Opportunity School District thing looks like Governor Deal's really trying to kind of make education part of his legacy. Want to turn now to something that I hope won't be as much a part of his legacy. NCAA March Madness brackets. Have you seen this, Tim?
I saw a picture just before I came in here of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle and some folks there on, I guess, the Senate floor going nuts when Georgia State won that game earlier today. And folks who haven't heard, spoiler alert, Georgia State won. Well,
that's a spoiler alert for me, and that actually bodes well for what I was for Governor Deal. I was going to mention his bracket, perhaps proving why he is much. If he as a young man was trying to decide whether to coach basketball or go into politics, this definitely shows that he made the right decision. Yeah. He has Georgia State and UGA in the final and could not pick a winner. So the ultimate homer here.
That's homerism, yeah, no doubt.
But so far he's holding strong.
His bracket is holding steady so far. Yes,
I'd like to see that trend continue as long as possible. But other state and state officials and senators were not as prone to be homers. Senator Isaacson has Kentucky. Isaacson has Kentucky, and most other officials. I think Speaker Ralston in the Georgia House also has Kentucky. But Governor Deal had to felt he had to give his state some love, I suppose.
I penciled in Arizona. Listen, if you come down to the end of the bracket and everybody has Kentucky, you need to be the guy who doesn't.
Right. So, I mean, but I guess what's the advantage to getting Kentucky right?
Exactly. Everybody else does. So, yeah.
I should have thought of that before I filled out my two brackets, but that's over and done with now. So let's, for the last few minutes of the program here, we've got about 5 minutes here on Talk of the Town. I want to just talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And real quickly, we've talked about this before, but for our listeners, I just find this to be kind of a funny story. You're starting your journalism career, and you think originally you're going to end up working for a newspaper or something.
That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into print. I did an internship at a place in Washington, D.C. called the National Journalism Center, and it kind of with an eye toward writing, because it was something I thought at that point in my life I did reasonably well. And we're talking now the late 80s. I came back to Bainbridge, Georgia. Folks might know Southwest Georgia. I was in school there at the time, a community college or a junior college, whatever we called them back in the day. It's Bainbridge State College now. And part-time job offers, a couple of them came in. The Bainbridge Post Searchlight is the newspaper. WMGR is the radio station. I thought, great. They want me to cover the cops and go cover the city council meetings. I'll do both. I'll double dip. I'll go to the same meeting, get paid twice. Newspaper wouldn't have any of it. I had to choose, and the radio station offered, $25 a week more, and 30-plus years later, here I'm in radio.
Going for the money, Tim. Yeah. Going for the money. Well, and I would imagine, it's worked out pretty well for you.
So far, I mean,
Yeah.
it's to the point now, and I'm getting to that point in my life where I really don't know how to do anything else. So, I mean, it better continue to work.
Right. And in the last year or so, you host Georgia's Morning News with a co-host,
Right.
and that position has changed.
It's changed. We had Martha Zoller. Martha Zoller ran for Congress. Went to work for the David Perdue campaign. Now works on the David Perdue Senate staff. A young lady by the name of Katie Andrew, young being the operative word there, graduate 2011, 2012 from the University of Georgia.
Right.
English, lit, or some such goofy major like that. Great resume. Taught English to kids in Korea. Worked on the Saxby-Chambliss Senate staff. Came to work for us as a part-time board operator. Came into my office to meet with me about what she thought was a news reading job. We talked for 30 minutes before she even understood what I was looking for. But there was instant chemistry. It's the most fun I've ever had in my life working with Katie in the mornings.
Well, it's certainly good on my end where I listen to it. I've really enjoyed you guys. It's been good. But I guess so. She didn't really start out to go into radio either.
I don't think so.
If her degree's in English lit, I would assume not.
No, I mean I don't, and we haven't talked to that extent. I don't know what she wanted to do or does. I mean, she's still obviously very young. I think she just turned 26. So I mean, there's a lot of twists and turns left for her, I'm sure. But she could be, and I'll say this because I know she's not listening.
I take offense at that.
She could be scary good in radio. I mean, she's one of those people who is she's just a natural. She gets it from the first day, and she's only going to get better. Listen, good, bad, or otherwise, I'm 52 years old. I am what I am. There's not much upside left here. She's got decades to grow and get better if she chooses to do this. The ceiling for her is virtually unlimited.
Mm-hmm. Do you have days, and this is going to sound obvious, I'm going to assume these days exist, where you struggle to come up with enough stuff to talk about?
Well, the great thing there is that there are two people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, what we do, if people listen to the program 6 till 9 here on WGAU here in Athens and 10 or 12 stations around the state, we come up with basically 3 topics, and we try to confine them to, not necessarily always, but we try to focus on Georgia issues, and 3 of them a day. And between 2 people, you can kind of find 3 things to talk about.
Sure.
And a lot of days, it's, what do you leave out? We'll kick this till tomorrow or the next day. So no, it's not always difficult. In fact, it's most often quite easy to find 3 things to talk about.
And then your hour-long program after Georgia's Morning News concludes, Newsmakers with Tim Bryant, where you speak with, often you speak live with people. Sometimes you play pre-recorded interviews from earlier, and you usually start that program by saying that it's the best hour of your broadcast
because it's
day.
the last hour of my podcast. I get to go home now. No, that's just one of those things I've said for years. Another thing I say during the course of that program, not the biggest radio audience in Athens, but the smartest, just little radio hooks that you like to use. And by the way, I take some pride in that. I think it actually applies.
Mm-hmm. Tim Bryant, local radio host at WGAU News, kind enough to stop by and speak with us this afternoon. We're quickly approaching the conclusion of this program here on WUOG. Sports will be along shortly. So Tim, as you continue with Georgia's Morning News, and this is something that I can certainly take and hopefully use on my little mini program here, how do you promote your show? Obviously, it's just the fact that it's broadcast out across the state. I mean, that's obviously the way most people are going to come across it, just turning the radio dial in their car. But what other efforts have you found?
Well, again, back to where we started here, social media, Facebook, Twitter. Those are the 2 I'm most familiar with. I gather there's some other things out there.
So I've heard.
So I've heard. And that's where, again, Katie is such an asset. She's literally half my age. And so she's is much more tuned into that stuff than am I. And she takes the lead on a lot of those things. Yeah. And she's out there using those various social media platforms. We hope to grow with that. But that's one area. And frankly, the primary area. One of the things we started in the last couple, 3 weeks, which seemed to be very popular. We get a lot of hits and likes and follows and so forth. We post videos, little 30, 40-second videos that go up on the various Facebook pages. Here's what we talked about today. Here's what I think. Here's what she thinks. Make them funny, ha, ha, ha. And, we posted a new one today about the hoop skirt issue here at the University of Georgia. And people respond.
There you go. And I guess that's one of the main goals there is for interaction.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, and again, find me on Twitter, Timbo I'm a Florida State Seminole fan.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure that out. Yeah. I was like, Timbo Noel. There you go.
Well,
got it.
Go Noles.
Well, we're at 5 o'clock here. We're going to have to bring it to a close, but I've certainly enjoyed speaking with Mr. Tim Bryant today of WGAU. Tim, thanks for coming in.
Anytime.
All right. Well, we'll certainly have you back then. This has been Talk of the Town here on WUOG. We'll be back next week from 4:30 to 5, as we are every Thursday that school is in session. About, I think, 6 more weeks of the semester, so you've got at least that many shows to look forward to. And
you guys validate parking?
I don't have to deal with that so much. I don't have a car. So. But anyway, as we try to figure out Tim's parking issues, we'll be back next week. Sports is up next.